Ciao, I'm Francesco Gola and I'm a seascape photographer from Italy. I'm an engineer, but I'm in love with photography since ever. For me, photography started to be more than a hobby about 15 years ago. And since then, I love to travel to capture the beauty of this world with my camera. My favorite subject is the sea, and I'm in love with the technique of long exposure. I'm also very passionate and committed to education. That's why I run a workshop and seminar about photography, printing and color management. I very well remember my first photographic adventure, and probably because it was the first one. It was a particular moment in my life where I felt the need to have a sort of solo trip. And I don't know where, but I found this beautiful image of this lighthouse in a remote island in Scotland, and so I decided to go there to capture it with a picture. I must say that it was the first step out of my comfort zone, and that's probably why it's still the best adventure that I had. And it was a challenge because at that time it was impossible to find online where to maybe to book a place where to stay there for the night, or even just to buy online the ticket of the ferry. So it was really a challenge. But actually I learned a lot from this trip from a personal point of view, and from that moment I think that I really became addicted to this kind of experience. I think that what I enjoy most of being a landscape photographer is the contact with nature. I really love to stay out in the field and maybe just to stay seated on the grass waiting the right moment to take my picture. And this is due also because, of course, I love to explore new places, I love to meet new persons, and I love to understand new cultures. So everything is enriching me, and I think it's good because this opens your mind, and this will be, of course, reflected in your images. So I think this is definitely the best part of being a landscape photographer. Well, I think that without nature and photography, I would probably be a completely different person. Probably I will be just a very analytic and boring engineer, but I'm lucky because nature is part of my life since my childhood, because I grew up in a small countryside village, so I was always in contact with nature. I would say that photography taught me how to see things with different eyes. And there is a quote that says that is not what you look at that matters, but is what you see. And I really couldn't be more agree with that, because photography gave me really new eyes to see the world and to express myself. I would describe my shooting style like meditative. Because I'm not the kind of photographer that when he's out shooting want to get like 100 shots. I just want one composition. Because to me, the most important part is to connect with the environment that is around me. So usually I look for a composition, and then I set my tripod, I set my camera, and at the end I spend the whole shooting in the same spot. I think that long exposure is helping a lot in this. So basically, you leave the shutter of your camera open for a few seconds, even 2 minutes. So it's really love to slow down and to enjoy the small things. Long exposure became my signature in seascape photography for basically a simple reason. Because in photography I've always looked for a sort of shelter from the frenzy of the modern life. And so basically long exposure, they became the perfect tool to slow down everything. To me, a long exposure is almost like a parallel universe where time and space became at the end the same thing. And it's so fascinating to me because at the end you are not just freezing one single moment, but you are collecting time. So I would say that I love a long exposure because they let me make visible what is invisible, and this is just great to me. I really love to use this limited amount of time to focus on what I have around me, on the environment, on the small things. This is very relaxing, and I think that to me is a sort of therapy. You may have standard, for example, if you are referring to technical aspects, so maybe the composition is not working or the picture is out of focus. In that case, of course, maybe you know immediately if a picture is good or not. But the idea that is behind my picture is that I want to communicate something, so it's never to show my technical skill. And what I want to communicate usually are my feelings and my emotion. And basically, I really realize when a picture is good in the moment when I see it on my screen, because if I start to have goosebumps, it means that I really was able to transfer something that I was feeling, something that was inside of me in a picture, and so I can share that emotion and that feeling with somebody else. I'm very lucky of being a landscape photographer, because in this way I had the chance to visit so many places, like Iceland with these endless black beaches, or Scotland with these beautiful lighthouses, or even the coast of France that is so fascinating to me. But I have to say that I have a very special connection with the northwest coast of Italy, and this is because it's there that everything for me started. In this place, I started to understand the power of photography, of the possibility that photography gives to you in terms of expression. And I started to experiment my techniques, and so the long exposure. It's definitely my happy place. I love to go there, even not to take pictures, but just to go there to sit in front of the sea and maybe to read a book and just to think about the world and the universe. If I have to pick one, probably I will pick a picture taken in Iceland. I have different reasons for that. First of all, because it was a wonderful trip with some great friends, and it was not a so lucky trip because we were really unlucky with the weather. This picture was taken on the very last day. We were heading to the airport in another rainy day of the week, but then suddenly we understood that something in the sky was changing. And so we decided to head to the coast in a spot nearby that we knew about that. And then we had in front of us this amazing landscape. So to me, it was just great because it probably was the first time I felt so connected with nature. I really had the feeling of being suspended in time and space. So the idea that I want always to represent with my images. The reason is that the images, every picture to me is more than the representation of the reality. To me, they are like a tool to travel back in time. So every time I see this picture, of course, I think about the beautiful adventure I had with these friends, but I also think about this unique feeling that I had on that day. I think that sometimes staying motivated and inspired is really hard for a photographer, not just for a landscape photographer. And I think that the reason is that we can easily fall in the trap of the over-expectation and the over-self-criticism. And this is due probably to the bad influence that we have from social media, where you are forced to overdo things. For example, to repeat things over and over in the pursuit of the perfectionism that, of course, doesn't exist, is a self-destructive process at the end. So after years, I learned that, at least for me, my personal way to avoid this is to try to set new challenges. So, for example, I try to look for new locations that maybe I don't even know how to reach them, or if there will be during the year a perfect moment to go there to take a picture. Or I try to experiment new things also in terms of technique, because there are so many things that you can try with long exposure. So this is my way to stay motivated and inspired. I have to say that was not photography that let me connect with nature. I can say that photography let me explore nature and my relationship with it. To me, nature it was like a drug that is able to slow me down, that is able to slow my mind down. I can really focus on the important things. And that's the reason why I love to maybe go on the field even 2 hours before the expected shooting time. So just to enjoy staying seated on the grass, maybe to read a book, and just to feel the sun on my face or the breeze of the wind on my skin. It's really important because it let me see details. And at the end, photography let me communicate these feelings with other people. So that's the real power of photography to me. Well, at the beginning, I got a lot of inspiration from classic photographers. I would say, for example, Michael Kenna, that I still consider the father of long exposure, or Sebastião Salgado, that was so inspiring in terms of exploring the world and taking beautiful pictures. But I have to say that more recently the inspiration is coming more from classic painter, more than photographer. One of my favorites is Ivan Aivazzowski. I would say obsessed with the sea, translucent wave that I try to get in the same way with my camera. Or for example, William Turner, that was an absolutely master with light, and I can learn so many things every time I just watch at his paintings. And or for example, Vincent van Gogh, that to me he was the really true master of color, because he was able to transform the pain of his tormented light into ecstatic beauty. Nowadays I find a lot of inspiration also from a contemporary photographer that I maybe find just scrolling my feed on Instagram, for example. And the best part of that is that you can connect with such people and you can learn so many interesting things that they will affect for sure your work, and in a positive way. In terms of gear, I really love to travel very light, and this is mainly for two reasons. The first one is because sometimes you are required to hike, and so you definitely don't want to have a heavy backpack on your back to hike for some kilometers. And then the second reason is for the paradox of choice. So more gear you have, more complicated it will be to choose among the things that you have in your backpack. So for this reason, I carry with me only two prime lenses, an 18mm and a 21mm, one camera body, a very sturdy tripod, and my filter bag, that are my tools to create long exposures on the field. Moreover, I always bring with me a nice book and some good music, because to me music and books are like a gear. It's formally a gear to me, because they can affect my mood. And if you affect your mood, you will affect your picture. So you have always to consider that when you're packing your backpack. It's never easy, especially because maybe you plan your trip months ahead. So it's impossible to know months ahead what will be the weather on the same day of the shooting. But you have to accept the fact that you can't control the weather, but you can adapt to the weather. You can take decisions according to the weather. And to do that, my suggestion is to take advantage of the technology. So try to use application, website that give you real-time and very specific weather forecast and weather model in order to take the right decision. And in this way, you can for sure take the right decision. I agree with the fact that when you take a picture, you put not only what you have in front of you in it, but even more what is inside of you. And you can influence the emotional result of your picture if you influence the environment around you, in my opinion. And that's the reason why when I'm out shooting, I love to bring with me a nice book and I read a couple of pages, or I try to listen some good music, some classical music, or I take some moment to think about my beloved ones. because I know that I can bring them inside of my picture, and if I'm able to do that, I will affect for sure in a positive way my image.